Hello, everyone. Welcome to another session of Vox Historicus. Today, we're going to be dealing with the market forces, specifically the market force of demand. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at the objectives. Now, we understand that we're going to have to take a look at demand and graphing demand. We're going to know the determinants of demand and demonstrate the effects of changes in determinants of demand. And we're also going to differentiate between movement along a demand curve and the movement of the demand curve. Sorry about that. So these are three objectives that we plan to master in today's lecture. Let's get started. Supply, demand, and the consumer choice. However, today, of course, like I said, we'll be dealing much with demand. All right. Now, we understand that certain factors are included within the circular flow of economic activity. We understand how goods and services, resource and productions, and income and spending and cost revenue all have a certain relation to each other. But I think what we took a look at mostly was individuals and individuals demanding in the product market. However, individuals supply in the resource market, whereas businesses will, of course, supply in the product market and demand in the resource market. And that's the circular flow of economic activity that you took a look at, the supplemental video online on Vox Historicus. Let's move on. So we begin by finding the connection to the circular flow model. We ask ourselves four different questions. Do individuals supply or demand? Do businesses supply or demand? Who demands in the product market and who supplies in the production market? Of course, we just answered those questions, and I'd like you to go back and possibly even reflect on that and make sure you understand that for a possible mini assessment along the way here. All right, so let's define demand. What is demand? Well, demand is the different quantities of goods, and actually, let me write that in there also, goods and services that consumers are willing and able to buy at different prices. We understand that Bill Gates is able to purchase a Ferrari. Of course, nobody's doubting that. But he isn't willing. He has no demand for one, okay? So again, he has to be willing and able to buy a Ferrari, no matter what the price. Now, what is the law of demand? Well, the law of demand states that there is an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. So between these two symbols here, between price and quantity demanded, there's an inverse relationship. Inverse relationship. Okay? All right. And the relationship is this. As price falls, quantity demanded rises. So as price drops, then quantity demanded rises. And therefore, as price rises, quantity demanded should fall. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we know to be the law of demand. Okay? All right, let's move on. Now, here's an example. Let me provide you with a good hypothetical example. I'm willing to sell several A's in AP Economics. How much will you pay? Now, normally I would have done this in class, but of course with the video casting here, I'm just going to assume that I've got a class full of students and I'm asking this particular question. All right, so let's just assume for a moment that the price of an A is $100. Oops, let me get that different ink on there. $100. All right, how many students would be willing to purchase an A in AP Economics for $100? Well, I don't see many hands up. So I'm going to say 0. All right, how about for $80? Oh, I see 2 hands. How about for $60? There we go. I see 4 hands now. How about for $40? Oh, I see 6 hands. How about for $20? I see 8 hands. How about for free? I see 10 hands. Wow. Is my example here following the law of demand? Yes, because, and this is the reason why, as price decreased, the quantity demanded of A's in AP Economics increased. But vice versa can be said of the same situation. What if price increases? If we go back up the ladder, then most likely you're going to see the quantity demanded decrease. Ladies and gentlemen, does this hypothetical example represent the law of demand? And that statement is true. It does represent the law of demand. All right, so far so good. Now, why does the law of demand even occur the way it does? Simply put, the law of demand is the result of three separate behavior patterns that overlap, beginning with the substitution effect, then the income effect, and lastly, the law of diminishing marginal utility. We will define and explain each of these together in class. However, let me introduce them to you here in Vox Historicus videocast. So again, why does the law of demand occur? The substitution effect. If the price goes up for a product, consumers will most likely buy less of that product and more of the substitute product, and vice versa. Don't you agree? And then we have the income effect. The income effect. If the price goes down for a product or service, the purchasing power increases for consumers, allowing them to purchase more. What if the price goes up for that product? Vice versa. The purchasing power decreases for the consumers, allowing them to purchase less. Is it making sense? I hope it is. Lastly, why does the law of demand occur? The law of diminishing marginal utility. U-T-I-T-Y. Right? Utility. Satisfaction is why. We buy goods because we get utility from them. The law of diminishing marginal utility states that as you consume more units of any good, the additional satisfaction from each additional unit will actually eventually start to decrease. In other words, the more you buy of any good, the less satisfaction you will acquire from each new unit. I want you to pause the video and I want you to reflect on the three reasons the law of demand occurs. Okay? And then lastly, I want you to reflect on what does this have to do with the law of demand and how does this affect the pricing of businesses. Be ready to discuss that in class. Another one here. Here, this example, the Disneyland Resort, theme park ticket prices and opportunities. Can you see the law of diminishing marginal utility in Disneyland's pricing strategy? Please pause the video, and I want you to write a short paragraph as to why you believe you can see the law of diminishing marginal utility in this example, or you cannot. Bring that ready for class. It may be part of a mini assessment. Calvin and Hobbes, the law of diminishing marginal utility. Oh, another bowl of chocolate frosted sugar bombs. The second bowl is always the best. The pleasure of my first bowl is diminished by the anticipation of future bowls. And by the end of the third bowl, I usually feel sick. Maybe you shouldn't use chocolate milk. I tried cola, but the bubbles went out my nose. I bet Calvin and Hobbes do understand the law of diminishing marginal utility. Graphing demand. When graphing the demand curve, well, first of all, let me explain what the demand curve is. A demand curve is a graphical representation of the demand schedule or table. The demand curve is actually downward sloping, showing the inverse relationship between price on the y-axis and quantity demanded on the x-axis. When reading a demand curve, assume all outside factors such as income are held constant. This is called Ceteris Paribus. Now, let's get into it. Let's draw a new demand curve for cereal. Here we go. Here is the demand schedule, as you can see here. It looks like a demand table, which you might call a table in mathematics. But however, this one's a little different. Keep in mind that your price is your Y and your quantity demanded is your X. Got it? Let's not forget that. As you can see here on the table and on the graph, quantity of cereal demanded is your X, price, of course, being your Y. Let's plot this now. Here we go. 5 and 10. 10 and 5. 20 and 4. 20 and 4. 30 and 3. 40, well, no, 40, 50 and 2, and 80 and 1. Now, I've got something along the lines of, let's see if I can connect the dots. Oops, little crooked there, but there we go. You know what? Let's just look at the real representation, see if I got it right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce the demand curve, correctly drawn. All right. The price of cereals and the quantity of cereal demanded comes together in a schedule to graph a demand curve. There it is, ladies and gentlemen, the demand curve. Downward sloping. What are the 3 reasons this occurs again? I want you to pause the video and reflect one more time. The 3 reasons as to why this occurs. Okay, be sure you know them. All right. Now, where do you get the market demand? Where do you get this demand? Where do you get it from? Well, you get it from every consumer in the market who is wanting to purchase that good or service. For example, here you have Billy's erase that very quickly here. Here you have Billy's demand, Gene's demand, and all the other individuals. And when you add them up, you will get the total market demand as you see fit here. Total demand. Total demand. And there it is, ladies and gentlemen, the total market demand. And you have yourself your final demand schedule. BC knows better. Can anyone explain supply and demand? Johnny, you seem like the only one with his hand up. When demand is high, supply is low, prices go up. How about giving us an example? Okay, my first answer was free. This one's going to cost you. You see, guys, it's all about what the consumer is willing and able to purchase. Thank you for participating in this lecture of Vox Historicus on the market force of demand. We're going to be moving on to demand and the shifters of demand for the next segment. Be prepared. See you next time.